Hey church family, I just want to share with you from a passage in God's Word today that has really given me some much needed perspective in my mind and some peace in my heart. It's Psalm 24. Verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein." The earth is the Lord's. This planet is God's property. And all of us belong to God as well. We are those who dwell therein. That's me and that's you. As the old song says, this is our Father's world. He is the one who started the story in Genesis, and the storyline is unfolding until the final chapter. We may not fully understand how what is happening to us right now specifically fits in God's perfect plan, but we know that He does have a plan and a purpose, and that He is in control. That's a much needed perspective. Verse 3 says, "Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in His holy place?" If everything belongs to God, if we belong to God, then the most important question we must ask ourselves is, how should we relate to this God? How can we enter into His holy place? How can we climb up to His hill? How do we make things right with Him? And then the psalmist answers his own question in verse 4, "He who has clean hands and a pure heart, and does not lift up his soul to what is false, and does not swear deceitfully." I'm so thankful for the way that this psalm brings the question home. You know, we've spent a lot of time, and this has been a big distraction over the last year or so, all of us worried about other people. Worried about what's happening in the hearts and the actions of other people, whether it be our neighbors and how they're responding to COVID, or what this church is doing, or what's happening in our church, or what the government is doing. And this psalm just slows us down here for a second and says, hold on, let's take a look at my own heart. Let's take a look at what's going on with my own hands. What is my soul being lifted up to? What's coming out of my mouth? Because it is these things that determine whether or not we enter into God's presence or not. Is our heart pure? Are our hands clean? Have we lifted up our soul to what is false? What's being described there is idolatry, lifting up your soul to a false god. You might say, well, I don't worship idols. But listen, worshiping an idol is not just bowing down before a statue. An idol can be anything. For Adam and Eve, it was a piece of fruit. For you and me, it could be our jobs or our finances, our families, our reputations, anything that we look to for stability and security or pleasure or fulfillment. That's an idol. And if there's anything we can know for sure over the course of this pandemic that God has been doing, it's that He has been exposing and destroying our idols one by one. Things that we took comfort in, things that we found satisfaction in, or security in, or significance in. So many of those things are being taken away from us. That's a painful process. But as we really drill down into this question about our hearts and our hands and our souls and our mouths, the truth is, no one passes this test of Psalm 24 verse 4. No one has a truly pure heart. No one's hands are perfectly clean. All of us are guilty of idolatry and speaking that which is false. There's only one person who is worthy to ascend into God's hill, into God's holy place, and that's Jesus. Jesus said in John 3, He said, "No one has ever ascended into heaven except Him who has descended." The only one who's qualified to go into the presence of God is He who came from the presence of God, Jesus Christ. And Psalm 24, remember, the Bible is one story. There is one majestic storyline from cover to cover. Psalm 24 beautifully anticipates the coming of Jesus Christ. Listen to verse 7, 8, and 9. It says, "Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in." Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. The psalm asks, who can ascend? Who can go into God's presence? And then it just says, you know what, on second thought, let's just open up the gates and let God come to us. And Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of God coming to us in Psalm 24. And in Psalm 24, we see the psalmist David looking forward to Christ's first coming. And now we can read Psalm 24 with anticipation, looking forward to Christ's second coming. Are we prepared? Are we preparing our hearts and our hands and our souls? Do we have this sense of peace knowing that the world belongs to God and that God is coming to make all things right? So, loved ones, I hope that that encourages you as much as it encouraged me. You are loved.